My name is Madeline Mickler, and I am in the lifelong pursuit of leadership. So for a bit of context and background, I became passionate about leadership after I graduated high school. I was all set to start college in the fall of 2015 at Florida State University. I loved school and I knew where I wanted to go, and I knew what I wanted to study. I was ready. Then in June 2016, about 3 months before I was supposed to start at FSU, I was walking through Barnes & Noble and I picked up a book about Gandhi's life. And on the back of the cover was a quote that read, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." And in that moment, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I remember that night, I went to bed and then I woke up with a complete change of heart. In fact, that summer, I just ended up declining admission so I could go on a year-long volunteer program in Detroit, Michigan. In that year, I developed a passion for leadership out of a newfound love for people. And so Gandhi's quote was true. I did learn more about myself and what I wanted to do, but ultimately I'm so grateful for my gap year because I learned more about people, and that's what drove me to pursue leadership. So today I'd like to share some things that I learned about people, and consequently about leadership. And so these 3 points that I want to make will probably seem like obvious pieces of information, and it might seem confusing as to why I'm even focusing on them for this talk about leadership. But in my observation, they are foundational key points that we often don't use in our interactions with others in the day-to-day. And so I find myself constantly missing the mark on these ideas, and I will spend the rest of my life striving to live up to these ideals. Because before you try to master all the different theories of leadership and learn all the specific concepts for the X type of business and Y type of workplace, I really believe you have to have a firm foundation of leadership. And at the end of the day, leadership is about people. And in my opinion, there are some things that are almost always true for everyone, no matter where you are, what business you're in, or the types of people that you're working with. And so that's what I've chosen to focus on here. So I'll have 3 guiding points that I think embody the key points I'm trying to make. 3 quotes. So the first quote is, "Be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle." And so back to my little story from the beginning that I mentioned, when people ask about my gap year, I often describe my experience in Detroit in this way. My entire life up until that year, I had been floating along in my middle-class, suburban, entitled bubble. And then I flew to Detroit, and within a few days, that bubble popped, and I just fell to the hard concrete ground below. So I was put into a bunch of different volunteer positions, ranging from a halfway home for drug-addicted pregnant women to an after-school daycare program that catered to children of gang members. I met so many people that faced extremely difficult circumstances. I remember meeting a man named Raphael, who was 40 years old and had lost his wife and 3 children because of addiction to painkillers. I met a young 8-year-old girl named Cherish, who never wanted to go home because her mom was always passed out on the couch and her dad was absent most of the time. And so it seemed like everywhere I turned there was so much pain and loss, and it really taught me the reality of the human condition and opened my eyes to what people all around me faced in their lives. And so a year later, I was back in my hometown, but it was like I had been given a pair of glasses that showed some kind of parallel universe. I noticed that most of the time, I had always taken people at face value. The angry man in the checkout line at Publix was just an asshole, and the sarcastic girl who constantly threw insults was a bully. But also the high-on-life guy in the class, or the woman who seems to have everything together. I just saw them as that only. But that angry man in the checkout line is actually someone who lost his wife a year ago and misses her every single day. And the woman who seems to have it all together is a single mom with crippling debt trying to make it work. And so you never know, but it's a safe assumption that everyone you meet is fighting some kind of battle. And it makes sense that when you're a leader, you have to know who you're leading. Before you even get specific, before you know who's an extrovert, who's an introvert, etc., one thing you have to know is that for everyone, life can be really tough, and everyone's got something that's beating them up. And so as a leader, you cannot be callous and take that for granted. I'm not saying that you should treat everyone like they're just fragile cargo that need to be bubble wrapped. What I am saying is that when you're willing to look deeper and sometimes extrapolate, your interactions with people will be much more loving and graceful than if you don't. you have to see people, and yourself for that matter, with compassion, no matter what storyline the exterior is portraying. Because at the end of the day, we're all fallible. And so, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. So quote number 2 is, too often we try to gain control with our words. Listening, done well, gives power away. A commitment to listening is one of the best antidotes for power and privilege because it is an act of surrender. And that's from a book called The Listening Life, one of my favorite books. And so I didn't mention this about my volunteer year earlier, but I actually felt useless constantly. I wanted to help these people in a much bigger way than I realistically could. And the little girl I worked with, Cherish, I couldn't take away her pain, and I couldn't take away the emotional damage that she will probably carry with her for the rest of her life. And I couldn't give back Raphael his family that he really loved, or zap away the addictions that harassed him. Like I said, I was never the hero who swooped in and saved everyone. Rather, the times when I saw the most hope in people's attitudes, the most comfort given, and the most love received was when I just stood with people, just listening to their stories, and I heard all types of stories. Triumphant, poignant, hopeful, bitter, resigned. And this was a really hard lesson to learn for me because I'm a fixer, but you cannot fix people. But you can stand alongside them and share in their life, whatever that might entail. And people are just dying to share their narrative with others. They're dying to be heard, to be listened to, really listened to. And so learning to be a good listener has honestly been one of the most interesting adventures of my life so far. And that might make it seem like I've had a pretty boring life, but like the quote said, a commitment to listening really is an act of surrender. It involves taking power away from yourself, your desire to express yourself in a moment, or to communicate your opinions and thoughts, to give your 2 cents, or to persuade. And it gives that power to others. It involves creating an interaction where the other person feels like they're free to say anything, like they're free to explore what they're going through and to truly be heard. So once again, this may sound basic, but in the 21st century where social media and dinging tech devices are king, where face-to-face communication continues to wither, and people are constantly busy and in a rush, it's truly a gift to be listened to well. And so as a leader, the art of listening is a must. And usually when you think of leaders, you more often think of the man or the woman at the head of the conference table or at the front of the room talking to everyone else, inspiring them or giving direction. And this is true, but I think that is also a leader's job to make sure that the people they're leading are heard, that their stories matter. When people know that their leaders want to listen to them and that they value their thoughts, I think it creates a dynamic where no one feels too intimidated or too insignificant to speak up. And because like Adam McHugh said from the book, a commitment to listening is one of the best antidotes for power and privilege. So my third quote, core values serve as a lighthouse when the fog of life seems to leave you wandering in circles. So I really love this idea because it just makes so much sense practically. Day to day, why do we do the things that we do as humans? We go to work because we need to make money. We go to school because we need to earn our degree, so then we can go to work and make the money. We eat because we're hungry, and we talk to others because we like relationships. But we're not just robots. We're not just programmed to do all these types of things 100% efficiently. We have the ability to make decisions about our life all the time. During finals weeks, I eat because I'm hungry, but then I eat again because I'm stressed and I want to avoid studying. And instead of maintaining my relationship with my friend, I cancel so that I can just binge watch Netflix by myself and drink beer. And so we make decisions all the times, but based on what exactly? And so like I said, we're not efficiency robots, but at the same time, we can't just operate without any underlying code. It's very common to hear things like, just do what feels right, or just follow your heart. And I understand that sometimes our heart, our intuition has served us well, but as I've observed in my own life, following that mode of decision making has been akin to a roll of the dice. If we don't have an established set of core values that we are tuned into and intentional about, we're just a bunch of people making decisions based on shaky foundations. Because if I personally always did just what feels right, I would just become really good at laying on my bed all day with my phone, and I would become the best referencer of The Office. And that's basically what my life would come to. And so during my volunteer year, I was asked by one of my leaders to come up with a set of core values, and we spent an entire day just boiling them down to only 3, 4, or 5, defining them, personalizing them. So a few of my own are being bold, being kind and loving, and being intentional. And this has tremendously impacted the way that I make decisions and the way I interact with others and in this world. And you'll start to see that the reason you make some decisions in certain areas of your life comes purely out of values and reasons that you don't want to embody. So the decisions I make in relationships, sometimes, for instance, they come from a desire to not show vulnerability and to not be wrong, because I can be really insecure. However, I know that I want to act boldly in my life, and actually being vulnerable is bold, and admitting fault without defenses or excuses is bold. And so back to the robots example, we aren't programmed to be 100% efficient, but we can program ourselves with these core values and try every day to live up to them in our actions and in our words. And as leaders, this is just necessary. Whether they're company values, mission statement values, or our own personal values, we need to be intentional in the decisions that we make that affect not only ourselves, but all the people that we lead. And so back to the quote. This is especially essential for when we find ourselves in the fog of life, which is always around the corner. And so those 3 key points are the points that I wanted to bring to the table today. And I think that a willingness to take on these ideas would really solidify leadership in all avenues. I think that a willingness to see everyone you meet through a lens of compassion and an understanding of context will revolutionize your interactions with anyone. A strong commitment to listening will serve and strengthen anyone who is on the receiving end of it. And finally, if you are adamant about building a base of operation made of core values, you will be able to live with purpose and lead people that depend on you with intentionality. And so I really do think that this is the type of leadership that provides the best opportunity for everyone involved to flourish and to grow. Thank you.